What we're going to do now is invite our Q&A session, our question and answer with Carol Singer. I'd like to invite Carol Singer to the show. Carol.
Hi, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Love being here in Denver.
Thank you for coming in. So welcome. You know, and Carol, we're so glad you're on the show today. You know, we mentioned at the outset that our purpose of this show is communicating the sustainable development investments and how companies are charting their course on sustainability, how they're making those investments in their operations, and how they're reporting, how they measure, manage, and communicate. And with your leadership, if you would, in a minute here, just tell us about NAEM and how you're representing the industry relative to the EHS and sustainability executives.
Sure. NAEM is the National Association for Environmental Management, and we're the largest professional association in North America, composed of the corporate decision makers of environment, health and safety, and sustainability. And we work to empower our members to really improve their conditions in their companies.
That's great, Carol. You know, we run into each other all the time at events, right? And just about every event. And you know, one time you said this statement, and it really resonated with me. You said that you kind of see yourself as the voice of EHS sustainability professionals. And you know, on our show and with this medium, what does the voice have to say?
Well, thank you for that introduction. You know, leading companies in North America really are doing a great job of advancing corporate compliance, ensuring safe and healthy workplaces on a global scale, as well as trying to meet the needs of sustainability in the new paradigm. So what we see is leading companies at all levels, including the CEO, are focused on what the energy performance of their companies, how they reduce waste, how they see themselves in a broader footprint of society, and then working to understand what sustainability means with respect to their own companies and to create new value opportunities.
And so much more. So, you know, I just remember that Mark and I met at an NAEM event.
We did. Indeed.
Awesome.
So you were a driver
Serendipity.
behind everything that's going on here. So thank you for that.
Connecting is good.
Connecting the dots, right?
Indeed.
So
Indeed.
I was down there and Mark was participating. I spoke on the green metrics that matter from the CRDA view, and that was over almost about a year ago, or a little bit over a year ago today. And you know, one of the things that we have really loved to see is this report take on a new life. So the green metrics that matter, there was research done, and then you put out a report, and then you put out, you worked with some other folks to put out a webinar to explain the findings of that. And you know, everything is available on the NAEM website, and we'll be handing this out to the audience as well as to the executive roundtable. There's so many findings in there that I can't go through all of them. But let's talk about a couple. And one of the ones that really resonated with me, and what Mark and I really love to talk about, is bridging the gap. So, and this is kind of proof positive. So the way that corporations are rolling up their information, the way they're presenting it, the way they're communicating it, may not be the exact same way that ESG researchers and investment analysts like myself, as well as as we talked about before, the big investment and financial services company, actually want to process that information. Or it's not the way that they you know, use it to make big investment decisions. So in terms of bridging that gap, what do you think is next, or what are the what do your membership want to say about that? Like, how are they going to help you know, help close that gap?
Well, thank you for those nice words about the Green Metrics That Matter. The Green Metrics That Matter was a survey that we launched with our leadership companies. And what we did was we wanted to take a look at what companies were actually reporting and how they were managing against those metrics. And what we found was that companies are doing a great job of tracking key performance indicators in the traditional areas of environmental performance, worker safety, health-related issues, some of the other social conditions. But there's not a great deal of established metrics, in the sustainability area. What we saw was that over 60% of the CEOs that we surveyed actually got real data on their energy, water, and natural resource performance. That's huge. You would not have seen that type of condition maybe 10 or 20 years ago. On the other hand, sustainability performance and how you evaluate a company is almost a different lens. You know, you have the basic areas of material use, operational efficiency, but you also have to look at your whole entire company through a different lens. Until now, we've really looked at the performance of a company strictly through performance criteria. And sustainability is a way to look at the performance of a company with the traditional environment, health, safety, social, and governance criteria as well. So that's why the green metrics that matter was good. We see that there is a lot of commonality, so that there are areas where both sides are looking at similar context.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. You know, to add to that, you know, it's a great contribution to the thought leadership that's underway in the marketplace. You know, today we talked about some of the news items we had. Look at the SASB, look at the other frameworks, look at the mainstreaming of the SRI community. So at some point, we may have already reached that tipping point because the mainstream investors are actually capitalizing on these opportunities.
Right.
So, you know, I was curious though, is there some feedback from that investment and that analysis? You mentioned that EHS organizations, so there's a company, the EHS function, if you would, environment, health, safety, the compliance mandates are underway, they're somewhat mature. We're charting this course towards sustainability. You mentioned the different lens, and that's where the sustainability lens looks at every function of a company, right? And so what are you seeing as how companies might be collaborating? What are some top ideas you're generating from your membership around how companies are collaborating to invest in sustainability?
Well, that's a very good insight. You know, collaboration actually is the key word. If you operated in companies, you know that there are challenges in terms of ensuring compliance excellence or just excellence in your own areas. Most companies are vertically oriented, and sustainability really requires a cross fertilization. So what we see with companies is they're putting together, you know, cross teams that are collaborating. These teams can come from, you know, the environment, health, safety function, but they bring on new product development, they bring on research and development, they look at operations and manufacturing, they bring in marketing, sales, and procurement or purchasing. So it's requiring a very different approach, which is a horizontal approach to decision making.
Right. Now we all know the metrics that matter, right? We think we do.
We think we do.
But what we are seeing and what we love is at the events that you do, we get to meet the sustainability executives and we get to hear the narrative. So when we met James Van Lagen from Carnival, to hear what they're actually doing at Carnival was literally not captured in all the data. Because it's talking about the performance, but as an investment analyst, we've really tried to progress the way we evaluate companies. That's why we're working with leading performance indicators where companies get to tell their ROI story. And it challenges them to do that. And also we've interviewed numerous executives for articles that we work on. And when you pose that tough question and they have to think through it and then they have to articulate it, whether they write it down or they're doing it on the spot, we've been really impressed. And we think that the metrics that matter are phenomenal, but they're that starting point. And then that next generation is the narrative, the leading indicators, and having them tell their story and having the excitement in their voice because they're proud of what they're doing and they're working really, really hard at it.
Well, I think that's a very key insight. You know, from my perspective, companies are really good at identifying a goal, developing performance metrics, then implementing that structure.
Right.
So they have strong process, they have strong focus, and they have strong measurements. And that's traditionally how companies were evaluated, through that very narrow context. And the more data you have seems to believe that you could have better decision making.
Right.
With sustainability, because it's requiring a different lens, the context is very important. So understanding what sustainability means to one industry sector may not be the same with a different. So for extractive industries that you mentioned, the evaluation or the critical sustainability elements are not the same as UPS or a service company.
Right.
So it's important for companies to go internal to understand what is it that they do well, what is that risk in terms of financial risk, whether it's climate change adaptation, access to raw materials, reduce water usage in the case of Coca-Cola, and then really to focus like a laser on those issues and improve performance.
And link it back to the financials. You know, the Puma story recently with their environmental P&L, they took and monetized their carbon footprint, and they looked at it as a production environment issue. You mentioned earlier about Vulcan, and look at Bank of America. They've done operational investments in their own asset base, but now they're taking their principles for responsible investment, some of those institutional frameworks that they've adopted, voluntarily, I might add, but then that's informing how they steward and lend capital. So they're taking what they've adopted in their own operating parameters and then saying, this is how we're going to lend capital and be the enabler for sustainable development. That's the pull-through strategy you see on the financial side.
Yeah, the challenge with Wall Street is that all data measurements by nature are lagging indicators.
Yes.
It's very difficult to have leading indicators. So historically, we've looked at management elements. Do they have management systems in place? For environment, health, and safety, an analogy would be, do you have corrective action, and do you have audit systems? Mm-hmm. Something could be said about that. We had an incident recently with BP where they had those systems in place, but maybe not the corrective actions.
Right.
So
right.
It's a more holistic view, and many times that holistic view is you cannot derive just from numbers.
Absolutely.
So that's why context is important
right.
for sustainability.
And it's an evolution. So in the companies that do adapt and are able to evolve to these changing systems. When we showed some of the earlier information on SASB and you saw the Jigsaw Puzzle, does that worry your membership? Do they like, oh my God, not another survey? And that's not what they do. It's a ratings guideline. But does that weigh heavily? Because these are some of the folks that have to either gather the information or produce the reports.
Well, thank you for saying that. In the NAEM's Green Metrics That Matter survey, many folks don't know about the environment, health, safety, or sustainability officer in the company. But that research demonstrated that our members participate in 90% of the time in doing that analysis and providing that information, and in 70% of the time, they're in fact the leader for the company. So our folks are intricately involved in understanding what transparency and corporate reporting is. That said, I think we're really at the beginning. While reporting and transparency has been going on for a couple of decades, as you said earlier, we really are at a very fundamental start, really, in what transparency and reporting means, because it's consistent with this paradigm shift. What I believe is that we'll go through a period where there'll be continued surveys and a lot more folks asking questions, but at the end of the day, there'll be fewer and fewer metrics that really matter, because the context is such a large part that you can only have fewer that are really critical in terms of key
Sure.
risk management.
Well,
right.
Michael, think forward. I mean, 3 to 4, maybe 2 to 3 years downstream, when the institutional frameworks, the SASB, IIRC, the GRI, there's a convergence globally. That links back to, say, the XBRL reporting aspects and the SASB model, right? So there's an opportunity
which we've
there.
talked about from the beginning of the show, when we talked about real predictive stuff. And even at your conference, we paint this picture of what's it going to look like. Well, we're going to work it all out. You're going to have one overall arching framework. You're going to have the metrics. You're going to have the industry working groups designing what the most material issues are for the industry. You'll be able to add in your narrative. You'll be able to put it all into a technology system by like maybe one of our partners, Enablon.
Perhaps.
And you can put all your data into that one overall software platform, click a button, and get this report of saying, this is what you're doing right, this is what you're doing wrong, here's where you need to fix it, and oh, by the way, here's what your peers are doing. So now you get that benchmarking, and you're finding out with a real incentive what you need to do. On the flip side of that, what if investors can go and say, well, tell me all the companies that have these characteristics?
Well,
They can produce their own reports, so they're using the information in a smart, intelligent, proactive way,
Yes.
right? And you're combining it all together. That's the future, not tomorrow, but maybe a couple of years from now.
Well, I do think that information management systems are empowering a lot of information, and it is going to drive decisions. That said, I don't know what tomorrow will look like, but what I do know is that there will always be a lot of different types of surveys,
Sure.
because different stakeholders have different concerns.
But we need to prioritize them.
And
Which one's the most
right.
material to
So
you?
a few years ago, you would look at the landscape, and it would have been very different than it is today. You talked about
Sparse?
you talked about GRI, and GRI in the last couple of years has done a great job in terms of improving awareness of themselves in the U.S. and understanding. But one of the challenges in our field is to not only look at U.S. and European companies, but then to take a look at the broader global landscape. So one of the challenges I think that we'll be talking about in the future is whether or not the questions that we're asking today are relevant not only for U.S. or European companies, but also for companies that come from the developing countries.
Absolutely.
That's where
Yeah.
most of the asset value creation is coming from. And so really, those are the bigger questions that will be on the horizon.
Wonderful. So will you stay with us and take some of the questions and answers
Sure.
that we've been collecting throughout the past couple of days as well as live?
Sure.
Fantastic.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
So just to remind everyone, let's put the Twitter screen up there. So you can join us live by using the hashtag SDROI. At this point, we've compiled all the questions, and we'll answer as many as we can. But Mark and I will also be able to answer them over the next couple of business days, and we'll use the same hashtag so everyone can search it. But we're pleased to have Professor Dr. Dan Sweeney back with us to help us with this Q&A.
Well, hi guys, nice job so far. Carol, nice to see you. Look forward to a little interrogation for you here. And we've gotten a lot of inquiries from the audience out there in Cyberland, and let's start with one for you guys. And here's what the questioner says. I'm a sustainability executive, and I'm overwhelmed with the questionnaires and surveys. Could you elaborate on SASB and its value? And is this yet another survey questionnaire I have to fill out? Now first, Mark and Michael, for all of our audience members, we might explain what SASB is.
Sure. You want to recap on that?
Sure. Yeah, so just to recap for our members, SASB is the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board. It is a sister organization to FASB, the Financial Accounting Standards Board. FASB is the SEC sister company that's been chartered to develop the generally accepted accounting principles, GAAP, if you would, for US-based operators. So here is now this, and they provide the guidance to SEC annual reports. So we think about linkage to environment, social governance reporting. So the SASB is going to provide guidance on ESG foundational issues, what's material to be reported on the annual SEC report.
Right. And it's going to be through an investor lens, mainly, but using all the executives and the advisory board and the working groups with the thought leaders that can help them to develop what those guidelines are. So it's not another survey, but it's more of a framework, it's guidance, which is sorely needed, but from both perspectives, the investment community lens, as well as all of the executive and the corporate community as well.
And they will have industry-specific protocols as well. That's what we think is very interesting.
Well, I think our questioner is probably greatly relieved it doesn't have to fill out another questionnaire.
Right.
Carol, here's one for you. You mentioned that NAEM is the, quote, voice, end quote, of the EHS and sustainability professionals. In your experience and research, what's the #1 recommendation for advancing the business case for sustainability?
Wow, what a great question. So I don't know if there's a #1, but I'd like to say that there are two approaches. One is an internal approach, and the second is an external approach that you can make in your company. So the internal one is really looking at your core issues. So looking at improving energy efficiency, water efficiency, natural resource efficiency, reducing less that's coming in. So looking for alternatives, and so that you have, so you may not have the same type of exposure. Looking for opportunities to create a marketplace for something you already have. So you have energy efficiency, reduction of use, and working internally to create those opportunities and engaging your employees. Many employees have a great opportunity to change the footprint of a company. Externally, look to collaborate with purchasing and procurement, R&D, marketing and sales. There's an increasing driver for sustainability, and the #1 driver, according to our research, is the customer. So quite frankly, engage those parts of your companies to understand what your customers and your suppliers want, and then create strategies to help meet those needs. It'll help ensure a better relationship with those customers.
Terrific.
Well said.
Very helpful.
Indeed.
This is a free-for-all. No, it's not. It's for you guys. In the Truth in Performance segment, you guys covered a lot of interesting material in a short time. Could you please recap on a few of the hottest companies or sectors you would recommend?
Sure, sure. So just to clarify, we don't want to be the Jim Cramer show. He does it already. He does it really well, better than us. So happy to talk about sectors and trends. Don't want to give individual stock advice, but in terms of what my perspective, and then maybe Carol and Mark, you could jump in. In terms of my perspective, I'm really bullish on industrial and manufacturing. So companies that are making things, infrastructure in terms of the roads that are going to be built, all the water that needs to be replaced. Companies that are working with utilities to make them on both their demand and supply side more efficient. So again, I'm, especially maybe it's because I just was in the heartland. So I think being able to feed everybody, being able to transport them and provide them with energy. So I love high tech, I love clean tech, and I think that the sexiest part are the companies that actually make products that are going to drive this new economy.
Mark, what do you think?
Well, I think with what sustainability drives is regional development. We're on the cusp here with this new energy paradigm in the U.S., for instance, with natural gas. That could foster what could be the third industrial revolution. So you may see global operators based here in the U.S., like your membership, but who may bring production back to the U.S. soils because of energy footprint. So from the analysis perspective, companies look at hedge pricing on procurement aspects for energy consumption, energy materials and water. So I would say the multiple infrastructure, I would concur with your suggestion on financials.
So we're going to have to, I guess, carry this conversation more online. So we're happy to answer more questions using the hashtag #SDROI. I think that we never have enough time for Q&A.
No.
We just don't. So one quick thing that I forgot to mention that I promised I would do is that our partner Enablon is producing their annual conference that both Mark and I will be attending. Hope to see you there, Carol. So you can go to enablon.com and look at their event, their U.S. Annual conference that will be coming up in September. So, and we'll also tweet that out as well.